Hello, Assalamu alaikum. I am your presenter and host Mrs. Iqbal, and you are watching my YouTube channel Biographies. Neil Armstrong, 1930 to 2012, was an American astronaut who gained the distinction of being the first person to both land and walk on the moon. That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. Neil Armstrong, 21st of July 1969. Early life. Neil Armstrong was born 5 August 1930 in Wapakoneta, Ohio, USA. He attended Blue High School and took flying lessons while still a student. By the time he was 16, he had gained his flight certificate. Aged 17, he studied aeronautical engineering at Purdue University, turning down a chance to study at MIT. His studies were partly financed by the USA Navy, and after his first 2 years, he was called up to the Navy for flight training, where he qualified to be a naval aviator. In 1951, he was sent to the Korean War, where he took part in active service, including an emergency ejection after his plane was hit by anti-aircraft fire. He flew 78 missions during the Korean War before returning to Purdue to finish his degree. In 1955, he graduated with a BA in aeronautical engineering. After graduation, he applied to be a test pilot for NACA, the high-speed flight station at Edwards Air Force Base. This involved testing new high-speed aircraft for the USA military. These included pioneering new rocket planes such as the Bell X-1B and North American X-14. As a test pilot, Armstrong became known for his natural flying ability and willingness to take risks, stretching the boundaries of what was possible. He was also one of the most technically capable engineers. In 1958, he was selected for the USA Air Force's Man in Space Soonest program. Later in 1962, he was later selected for the Apollo program, which aimed to put a man in space and land on the moon. In J.F. Kennedy's address to Congress of 25 May 1961, he had put landing on the moon as a primary goal for America. Landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth by the end of the 1960s. The space project was also infused with Cold War symbolism, with an unofficial space race taking place with America's ideological enemy, the Soviet Union. After the Soviets became the first to put a man in space, there was even greater pressure for America to win the prize of putting a man on the moon. On the 40th anniversary of the Apollo mission, Armstrong said that the moon race was a helpful diversion from Cold War tensions. I will not assert that it was a diversion which prevented a war, but nevertheless it was a diversion. 2009. In the early 1960s, Armstrong took part in Project Gemini, flying spacecraft in long-duration space flight. This gave NACA and Armstrong valuable experience for the more ambitious targets of the Apollo missions. In December 1968, Armstrong was chosen to be the commander for Apollo 11, which would be the first planned mission to dock and land on the moon. Armstrong was chosen to be the first person who would have the distinction of walking on the moon. Some suggest NACA chose Armstrong because he did not have a large ego. It suddenly struck me that tiny pea, pretty and blue, was the earth. I put up my thumb and shut one eye, and my thumb blotted out the planet Earth. I did not feel like a giant. I felt very, very small. His fellow crew members were Michael Collins and Buzz Aldrin. The Apollo 11 launch was a success, and after a tricky descent, Armstrong manually landed the lunar module on 20 July 1969. Armstrong said later that it was the lunar landing which was the trickiest part of the trip. The landing approach was by far the most difficult and challenging part of the flight. After checking fuel and other checklists, Armstrong got ready to leave the craft and walk on the moon. He left the Apollo lunar module and touched the moon's surface at 2:56 UTC, 21st July 1969. On taking the first steps on the moon, he said the famous words, "That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." Armstrong later said he never planned the words in advance. One reason was that they were never certain of success. He felt there was only a 50% chance of making a successful moon landing. He later said, "The words and pictures were broadcast on radio and made headlines across the world." In a telephone interview with USA President Richard Nixon, Neil Armstrong spoke of the mission. "It's a great honor and privilege for USA to be here representing not only the United States but men of peace of all nations, and with interests and the curiosity and with the vision for the future. It's an honor for USA to be able to participate here today." On their return to the USA, they were feted as heroes and embarked on tours of the USA and the world. This included a visit to the Soviet Union in May 1970. After the Apollo flight, Armstrong retired from space missions and accepted a teaching position at the University of Cincinnati. He also served as a spokesperson for several businesses, including advertising campaigns for USA car producer Chrysler. Armstrong also served on crash investigation missions, which looked at aircraft disasters such as Challenger. Armstrong married his first wife, Janet Gearan, in 1956. They had 3 children. They divorced after 38 years of marriage. In 1994, he remarried Carol Knight. Armstrong remained without political affiliation, though he declared himself in favor of state rights and against the USA acting as the world's policeman. He did not have a religious affiliation, but described himself as a deist. Many friends speak highly of Armstrong's character, saying he had a natural humility and was careful to avoid boasting of his unique role. John Glenn, the first American to orbit the Earth, said of Armstrong, "He was a humble person, and that's the way he remained after his lunar flight, as well as before." Armstrong died on 25th August 2012, aged 82 from coronary complications.